Okay, good morning, everyone. So we are on the second Makkot Daf Kaf Daled, the last Daf. Amud Aleph. We've been going through. We've seen how Gemara told us that there are 613 mitzvot, Tariag mitzvot, and then we saw how we began to see that Yeshayahu, at least, before that, David HaMelech reduced them to 11, as we explained yesterday. We went through it. Not that he reduced the mitzvot they want us to keep, but reduced, I guess, what we can focus on. And in later generations, it was too much, it was too difficult to be able to fulfill everything. And therefore, if we focus on 11 sort of principles, everything else really is an outgrowth of that. And that would allow one to have sort of a system in order to make sure that one fulfills the Torah. As we saw, many of these ideas, a number of them are going to repeat. Gemara goes through how later generations, 11 became too much. Then it became 6, became 3, became 1. Many of them are similar. Many of them are related to emet and sheker, interestingly, related to truth and not lying and not taking bribes and not accepting falsehoods and things like that. Mentioned many of these principles are related to ben adam le chavero, between man and man, but not exclusively. There are principles here which are very much related to ben adam le makom as well. So we went through, we saw David HaMelech Emidan al Achat Esrei. Just quickly read it without going through the whole thing again now. But if you would look on Daf Kafdal Amud Aleph, so about 3 lines from the top, it says Ba David ve'Emidan al Achat Esrei dichtiv. And here the Gemara quotes the whole Mizmor of Tehillim Tetvav, not a very long Perek. And it says Mizmor LeDavid Hashem mi yagu ba'alecha mishkon ba'al kodshecha. Who can dwell in your tent? Who can live on your mountain? הולך תמים, ופועל צדק, ודובר אמת בלבבו, לא רגל על לשונו, לא עשה לאל רעה, וכפה לא נשא על כלבו, נבזה בעיניו נמאס, ואת יראי השם יכבד, נשבע לערה ולא ימיר, כספו לא נתן בנשך, ושוחד הנקי לא לקח. So those are the 11 principles which David HaMelech enumerates for us. And then it says, עושה אלה לא ימות לעולם. One who does these will not falter forever. And then it goes through, it explains either who each one is referring to or what quality each one is referring to. Okay, so then when we get to the end, a few lines later, maybe 10 lines from the end of the narrow lines, more or less, it says, Rabbi Yishmael, Rabbi Yossi Ktiv, Oseh ele lo yimot leolam. It says, Rabbi Yishmael, Rabbi Yossi Ktiv, Oseh ele lo yimot leolam. כשהיה רבן גמליאל מגיע למקרה הזה, היה בוכה. Right, so we are, basically, if you see where the Rivan actually turns on this daf, you've got Rivan on both the left and the right hand side of the page. Right, there's no Tosfot here, but it's actually, and then the Rivan changes at a certain point. So Rashi didn't get to the end of Masechet Makkot, and the Rivan took over, and he doesn't quite get to the end either. That changes to the Rabbeinu Gershom. But in any event, at the bottom there on the left-hand side, it says Hadran Alach Elohein Elokim, the end of the commentary of Rabbeinu Gershom. So about 4 lines up from there, 4 or 5 lines up from there, the line that begins Rabban Gamliel in the Gemara. So it says Rabban Gamliel Magiel Mikra Zaya Bocher. When Rabban Gamliel would learn this pasuk, he would cry. Why? Amar de'avid lu lakulu udelo yimot hachad aminau yimot. Like this, as we've seen, this Mizmor of David HaMelech talking about these 11 qualities and 11 principles a person has to fulfill. They're not easy. Very, very lofty things. We're talking about absolute scrupulous levels of honesty, of things which are not so simple. And says Rabban Gamliel, it says somebody who fulfills all of these will not falter. So he says, Man somebody who fulfills all of them. But if you just fulfill one, that's not enough. So he would cry, meaning this is such a difficult thing to accomplish. Some relay, they said to him, no, miktiv ose kol eile. Ose eile ktiv. Doesn't say somebody fulfills all of it. It doesn't say ose kol eile. It says ose eile. Someone does say if you do one, that's enough. If you do one, that will be enough to get you, I suppose, the entry le'olam haba, or however we describe it. So the ilote ma'achi, if you don't say that, ktiv kra'achrina, we have another pasuk. which is Al Titamu B'Kol Eile. There, this is the psukim referring to the section of Arayot, the forbidden Arayot. So it says Al Titamu B'Kol Eile. Right, so there you're going to say the same thing. You're going to say where it says B'Kol Eile, it's only somebody who's involved in every single one of these forbidden relations. They're going to be punished, but not just one of them. That doesn't make sense. So just over there, it means just one of them. And over here too, it says one of them. Interestingly, that the Gemara brings a proof from Pasuk where it says, Oseh kol eile, to mean that it doesnn't actually mean all of them. There, it's a kal v'chomer almost. Right there it says, Oseh kol eile, when it does all of them, and it's not all of them, it's just one. See how it just says, Oseh eile, when it does some, or does one of them, that would be enough. Yeah, so just before we move on to that, so let me show you two interesting things. There is a slightly different girsa of this discussion that we find in the Yalkut Shimoni, which is one of the Midrashim. And when you see it, you'll see how it is very, very much connected to with the conclusion of Masechet. There's going to be another two stories here, which follow on a similar thing. So have a look over here. The Yalkut Shimoni says, brings a story like this. It says a slightly different version. Yeah, he says, "Kshaya Rabban Gamliel Koreh Mikra Hazeh Haya Boche Amar Mi Yachol Lasot Kol Eile." So our Gemara is just in the Gemara it says Rabban Gamliel would read and he would cry. So here in the Yalkut Shimoni it goes a little bit more, has a little bit more detail. It says he would read and he would cry, and he said, "Who can do all of this?" Ukshaya Rabbi Akiva Koreh B'Psukim Eila Haya Mesachek. And when Rabbi Akiva would read these psukim, he would laugh. Sound familiar? So it should. We're going to see a little, some more stories in the Gemara now. At the end of the daf and over the Amud, where the other Chachamim cry and Rabbi Akiva laughs. So it's interesting that the Yalkut that would be the connection between the story and the other stories in our Gemara. Interesting that it brings it like this. So he says, "Rabban Gamliel says to Rabbi Akiva, why are you laughing?" He says, "Go have a look what it says." By Shratzim, by over there it says Al Titamu B'Kol Eile Yacho Eino Metamei Ela B'Kulam V'Em Naga B'Kadasham Min Asher T'Tamei Midat Tova Murba Min Midat Puranut 500. Says Rabbi Akiva that the same way you see other psukim where it says Ktiv Kol Eile Al Titamu B'Kol Eile, and there it doesn't mean it gives a list of different things which would cause tumah. It doesn't mean just one of them, right? If you touch any of them, that will impart tumah. And we know that we saw this in the Gemara previously as well. So that a midat tova is merudam in midat puranut. That a good measure is 500 times greater than a bad measure. So mazeh mishnaga bechad mehem afilu b'kadash hatameh keilu naga b'kolan. Just as if one has touched one of these objects, and that is going to bring tumah, even a very, very small one, as if he's touched all of them. Says lo kol sheken aseh mitzvah achat men, will not be all the more so if you do one mitzvah. As if you have fulfilled them all. So amazing. So we see right there's Rabbi Akiva. That's his ability to come and comfort, not just in terms of that which happens in the reality, but that reading through the mitzvot and the averot in the Torah as well. So that is one that I thought was very interesting comparison between our Gemara and the version in the Yalkut Shimoni. Now another point, beyond the Aruch Laner. So he asked the following question. That, remember, the whole point of this Gemara was kind of to make things easier. Right? We said that we have 613 mitzvot. We discussed yesterday. We have 613. David HaMelech reduces them to 11. So the first one says, be like Avraham Avinu. We said that doesn't really seem like it's making things easier. Right? Be like Avraham Avinu. And we said that means that even though one is unable to reach the same level and the same ma'ala as the avot, nonetheless, one needs to try and emulate the qualities, and one needs to emulate the effort to put in, and that was the comparison over there. But yeah, they're going to ask a similar question on this. He says, "K'tzat kashe. Im ken ma she'amidan David al 11 perusho echad me-11. Im ken kol sheba acharav gam ken perush ken." he asks this question slightly differently. He says, if the whole point was to say, we can't focus on 613, that's too many. We can focus on 11. Another Gemara says, well, focusing on 11 is too many. He says, no, you don't have to do all of them. You just have to do one. So understand, if you just have to do one, so focus on one. What do you mean focus on 11? And if you're saying that everything, what David HaMelech was coming to say was come and focus on 1 out of 11, well, then why did Yeshua have to come and reduce it to 6 or 3 or what? If it's 1 out of 3 or 1 out of 1 or 1 out of 6 or 1 out of 11, what difference does it make? You just have to keep 1. The whole point is reduce the number of things you have to focus on so that you can eat more easily. You only have to focus on 1. So then give us one thing to focus on. Why 11? He says, again, right? The next thing we're going to see in the Gemara is that Yeshua reduced it to 6, then maybe 1 of 6. Then can in other words, everybody coming afterwards is actually being more machmir than the ones who came before, because David HaMelech is saying there are 11 things, you can't do all of them, you can do 1. Chabakuk eventually comes and says, no, there's 1, you have to. So and that's actually going to be the most machmir rather than the most make. Everybody else, you can have one of these many things. As we will see. So says the Aruch LaNer, he says, that's not what it means. That each of these is coming through later generations where things got easier, just because of Yeridat HaDorot. The Rivan is going to explain the Kol Sha'ah Dorot Mitma'atin. Each generation it becomes more difficult. V'yesh lomar שמה שבחר רבן גמליאל היינו שהיה מדייק דווקא עושה כל אלה הוא דלא ימות לעולם, אבל מי שלא קיים מצוות הללו הוא ימות לעולם. Right, initially Rabban Gamliel made the following diuk that we've seen, and that is why he was crying. He says it's dafka oseh kol eile, meaning somebody who fulfills all these 11 principles which David HaMelech said will not falter, but somebody who missed out one of them will falter. And that's why he was crying. Who is able to really fulfill all of these things? If you've just missed one, that's it. So Shiv Rabbi Akiva, and then Rabbi Go answers no. He says, okay, so that's what we've already seen. But what's the chiddush? Says there Aruch LaNer like this. He says, "Imken hadiuk hachi oseh achat me'ele achatze udelo yimot." At the end of the Perek in Tehillim said, "Lo yimot," you will not stumble, you will not falter. Right? That's if you do 1 out of these 11. However, hami shelo asa afilu echad mehem, dainu shelo yizkeh afilu al echad mehem, over the imot olam. So somebody who can't do any of them at all, that will falter. Aval la'alot la'al Hashem, but to go up to our Hashem, v'lagu b'mkom kodsho, lo yizkeh rak al yedei kiyum ha'chatzle. Right? Have a look again at the Perek in Tehillim. It started off. The first pasuk was Midmar Davar Hashem, Mi yagu ba'alecha, mi yishkon ba'kodshecha. I mean, who will be in the presence of Hashem, so to speak? Who will go up and stay on the mountain, right? And then at the end it says he went for. So there are two things going on, 2 levels. The end of the Gemara is talking about at the end of the Perek of Tehillim. It's talking about a negative level. It's saying if you can't fulfill any one of these 11, then you're in trouble. But if you want to reach this level of lagub b'mkom kodsho, right, yagub ba'alecha mishkon ba'kodshecha, now there you need to fulfill all 11. That's it's almost like a lekatchila b'diavad. Right? The Perek does not say do one or the other. It says ela upoel ktiv. It says and. So Chabakuk came later and he said, no, even if you have 1, then you will be zocher to this Chayei Olam Haba, etc. Okay, he brings a proof for it from Tosfot, from Bava Metzia, but that is the Aruch LaNer. So he makes that distinction between the beginning of the Perek, where it says Mi yagu ba'alecha, for that one needs to fulfill all 11, and at the end when it says Lo yimot le'olam, Lo yimot, who will yimot? That is somebody who does not fulfill even one of them. Okay. So that was based on David HaMelech, who said 11. Now the Gemara goes on, and it says later generations, even that was too difficult. So we are 3 lines from the end of the narrow lines in the Gemara. It says, By Yeshayahu ve'midan al shesh. So Yeshayahu and Avi came along, and he reduced it to 6. Gone from 11 to 6. What are the 6? Tichtiv, holech tzedakot v'dover meishalim. That's 2. Moes b'betza mashakot. Noel kapav mitmoch b'shochad. Otem ozno mishmoa damim. V'otzem enav milot bala. Okay, so those are the 6 things. Now we go through them again, one by one, in terms of who is the model for this, or what precisely are these different things. The first one was, says the Gemara now in the wide lines, first one of 6 was holech tzedakot. Somebody goes and walks in the ways of righteousness. They're Avraham Avinu. Again, Avraham, interesting. They both begin with Avraham Avinu, right? David HaMelech started off with was it holech tamim? Notice both as well are holech. And this is going to be part of the idea, not by coincidence. Avraham is one who's told lech lecha. Avraham is a holech, represents the fact that he's always moving and always growing and always, as we'll see here, he's transmitting that idea onto his descendants and to his students. So just as David HaMelech there, he said holech tamim. That was Avraham Avinu. Here he says holech tzedakot is Avraham Avinu. Tichtiv ki yadativ leman asher yitzaveh. Right, the full pasuk. Ki yadativ leman asher yitzaveh et banav ve'et beito acharav v'shamru derech Hashem la'asot tzedakah u'mishpat. This is before Hashem tells Abraham about what is going to happen with the storm, and he says, I have to tell Abraham, who is the antithesis of storm, about who he follows in the ways of righteousness, and he brings this on to his children. That is holech tzedakot. That is Abraham. I'll just share with you here as well. There's an interesting piece in the Chashukei Chemed, based on this idea of holech tzedakot, maybe not quite the pshat, but he adds on, he brings the following case. There's somebody who walks around for tzedakah. He says over here the following interesting story. It says, She'ela, HaMeshulach min Navardok hayta dmut yidua mod belita. There was the Meshulach from Navardok, go around in Lita. He would go and he would collect tzedakah. Pam achat egia lemeono shel Hagon Rabbi David Friedman miKarlin. Okay, now he came to the Rav from Karlin, who was a great Rosh Hashiva and a great Gaon. He was very old at that stage, and he says, "Alav shaya kfar zaken muflag shakad al talmido b'atmadan nora'a." So he was sitting there and he was learning. So he didn't want to interrupt him. And therefore he waited. Okay, so there are some people who can still do this today, but generally speaking, this is something from a previous era. People were able to sit and to learn and without any interruption. So b'meshach dakot arukot, didn't have any WhatsApps or TikToks to look at in the middle of his learning. B'meshach dakot arukot himshich hagaon le'mod v'lo hevchin b'meshulach. So he sat there learning and didn't realize somebody was standing there. Lefeta harim et einav, suddenly he looked up. Hivchin ba'elech v'shalo mi hu kvodo ma rotzono. He looked up. He saw somebody standing there. Okay. He said, who are you? What are you doing here? He said, he's come to collect tzedakah. He said, okay. He put his hand in his pocket. He gave him some tzedakah. And that was it. He went back and carried on learning. Now, the person who was collecting didn't leave. Why? Because he was so amazed to watch the Rav, to see him learning. He wanted to carry on seeing. He said, so you see this old rabbi is still sitting there and learning. This was an inspiring sight. Right? A few weeks ago, just over a month ago, we mentioned when Rav Edelstein passed away. So the pictures, unbelievable. You see him, the video which came out this week as well, where he's sitting in the hospital, he's sitting in the intensive care unit, literally, hours before he passed away, but he's sitting and he's learning and he's giving a shiur. It's something very, very inspiring. So anyway, this Meshulach was watching. He says, "Chafu kama dakot v'shuv harav merim et einav v'shoel yishmiu v'ma rotzeh." So Rav looks up, and again he sees the person. He doesn't remember that he's been there before. So he asks him, who are you? He says he's a Mashalach, he's collecting money. So and he gave him the money. Okay, now if you're that Mashalach, if you're the one collecting money, what do you do at that point? He keeps giving you money. So happens again. So he understood something he was not right. And he says, he says, the Rav's already given me twice. He says, I'm staying here because I'm enjoying watching the Rav learn. I'm not asking for more money. So Rabbi David Karliner, he began to cry. And he says, he says, I'm very old. My mind is not what it once was. I forget things. He says, he says, please forgive me for the fact that I don't remember who you are, and I've asked again, and I've given you money. So V'kano Sifagon, and he added on the following. He says, Aval Baruch Hashem lo shachachti davar v'lo chatzi davar afilu mima shlamati lifnei 50 shana. He says, that which I've learned in Torah, that which I've learned even 50 years ago, that I remember everything, that I don't forget. Baruch Hashem divrei Torah neshachach. The divrei Torah I don't forget. The fact that you're standing here in front of me 5 minutes ago, that I forgot. But the Torah that I've learned, I have not forgotten. Okay, so what's all this got to do with Gemara? He says, because holech tzedakot, he's walking around and getting the tzedakot again and again. He says, yesh nish'ol b'mekeh kazeh. Shanoten tzedakah chozer, v'noten mechamat ha'shechra. If a person comes along and he gives the money again, ha'im mutar litol et hamamon. Can he receive the money, or does he have to tell him no? He's already come and he's already given to him. Okay, so he says. His conclusion of Zilberstein, he says in our question, since he's forgotten, and he's giving again because he thought he hasn't given, he says it would not be appropriate to take from him. If it's a few prutot, so it's a small amount, the person who's giving is probably not makbid, but nonetheless, the appropriate thing would be to go back and to tell him. The truth is, this is quite similar to the story that we saw in the Gemara yesterday about Rav Safra, and we'll see similar ones, right? The Gemara said that Rav Safra was a dover met bil vavo, that he was somebody that was in the 11 principles of David HaMelech, that he speaks truth in his heart. Why? Because somebody came and wanted to buy something from him, and he gave him the price, and Rav Safra didn't say anything because he was reading Kriyat Shema. So then he offered him a higher price, and Rav Safra said, no, I'll take from the original price. The reason I didn't answer back was not because I was trying to negotiate, but it was because I was saying Kriyat Shema. In my mind, I'd accepted the fact that that's all that I would be receiving, and therefore that's fine. So the same thing, I guess if a person's giving tzedakah, if he knows the person didn't really wouldn't intend to give him again, so then he probably shouldn't keep it. Okay, but that is the first case. Okay, the second one says Yeshayahu Navi. He says Dover Mesharim, somebody who speaks again Mesharim from the language of Yashar, of being straight and being upright. So what does that refer to? He says Zeh she'eino maknit pnei chavero berabim. Much do we need this today, right? Somebody who does not insult or slight another one in berabim, in public. And some of the Mepharshim explain, this could be referring to a case where you have to give rebuke, where somebody has to rebuke somebody else for something they've done, but not to do it in an embarrassing way, not to do it in a public way, do it quietly. But and nowadays you have online shaming, etc. So many times you don't like what a person's done or what a person said, so people just publicize to the whole world. No, go and speak to the person first and tell them what you think. Okay, number 3, mo'es bebetza ma'ashakot. So somebody who despises betza usually refers to money, which comes from ashakot, which comes from theft, or something that comes in a dishonest way. So kagon Rabbi Ishmael ben Elisha. That is like the case of Rabbi Ishmael ben Elisha. What is the case of Rabbi? No. Yeah. What is the case of Rabbi Ishmael ben Elisha? So it says over here the Rivan. The Botzei Mashakot, we're at near the bottom on the right hand side. He says, Shelo ratzah litol le'atzmo reishit hagez. Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha was a Kohen, and so somebody came to give him some of the matnot kuna. There are different, right? We know truma. We know there are different matnot kuna which are given. One of them is the reishit hagez, the first shearings from the sheep. So they wanted to give that to him, and he refused to accept it. Lo ratzah litol le'atzmo reishit hagez. Shevilo adam acher. Adam Echad, a certain individual came, Shebal Adun Lefanav. So the case was that this person came to Rabbi Yishmael's Beit Din. He came, he had a din Torah there, and once he was there, he came from a different place. And once he was there, once he was coming, right, he wasn't offering it as a bribe. Okay, but he came to give it to him because he said he's coming, he's in the area anyway, and he has this manat kuna he has to give, he wants to give it to Rabbi Yishmael. So Rabbi Yishmael refused to accept it. It says, Afal Gavdava Kohen Rabbi Yishmael ben Elisha, Mishum Dadami Ilu Ashko, Le Kohen She'al Agil, Zeh Litain Lo Matanot. The reason he refused to accept it, basically, he asked him, he said, where are you from? The person said, he's from another city. And Rabbi Yishmael said, there aren't any Kohanim in your city where you live. He said that he felt it would be, in a way, it was the depriving those Kohanim, even though the person who has it can decide on any given occasion to give his matnat kuna to whichever Kohen he wants, since those Kohanim usually received it, it would be in a way slighting them and depriving them, and therefore he refused to take it on their expense. So that is Moes B'Betzah Mashakot. Number 4 is No'el Kapav Mitmoch B'Shochad. Somebody who shakes their hands from receiving any form of bribery. Okay, again, this is not actually accepting a bribe, that is obviously forbidden, but it's even anything which might be associated with it. Kagon Rabbi Yishmael Rabbi Yossi. This is like the case of Rabbi Yishmael Rabbi Yossi. Now the Gemara actually mentioned this case earlier. The case of Rabbi Yishmael Rabbi Yossi was also, there was he had somebody who worked in his field, was an aris, who would work in the field, and then once a week he would come and he would give him a certain amount of the fruits of the field. The Gemara in a different place says he would come and he would give it to him every Friday. And it happened to be that on this occasion, he came early, he came on Thursday, and he brought it to him. Why? Because, again, this individual he had a din Torah for Rabbi Yishmael, and therefore he had to come to the city, or he had to come to his place early. And since he was coming, he decided to bring him these perot, again, out of his own convenience, so that he wouldn't have to come again. Not because, not to try and influence Rabbi Shmuel, right? Not to try and influence Rabbi Shmuel in any way, but he just wanted to come and give it to him. And Rabbi Shmuel did two things. He refused to accept it, and he refused to sit the case. He said, we'll find a different dayan who'll sit on the Beit Din, even though he hadn't accepted it. But nonetheless, he felt that would influence him, and he wanted to completely shake himself of any possibility of being associated with shochad at all. So therefore, that is the case over there. So that was number 4. Number 5, otem ozno mishmoa damim. Somebody who blocks one's ears from hearing damim. So the word damim over here related to blood. In other words, which can mean in the literal sense, can mean in a figurative sense as well. And that sort of embarrassing anybody is compared to spilling their blood. So so from hearing anything sort of disparaging. So what the Gemara says, otem ozno mishmoa damim, de lo shama beziluta tetzuba men rabanan v'shatik. Okay, so there you have people often ask in the Sunday share, what is Subam Rabbanan? Subam Rabbanan refers to a young Tamid Chacham. This is one of the places the Gemara says that in many places. Tzurva comes from the word litrov, to be burned. Somebody who is burned from the sages, somebody who's burned by their words, i.e. somebody who is associated and is becoming a Torah scholar. So it says, otem ozno mishmoa damim, somebody who blocks their ears from, in other words, somebody who does not hear a disgrace or hear disparagement of a Talmid Chacham and is quiet. In other words, if they hear something, they will stand up for them and they will support the honor of Talmidei Chachamim. And the example of that, Kagon Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Shimon. Right? The example of that is Rabbi Elazar ben Rabbi Shimon. Very interesting story, again, which the Gemara tells us. Not over here, but what happened when Rabbi Elazar ben Rabbi Shimon died? Before he died, he told his wife not to bury him straight away, but to leave his body up in the attic. And one day, and it stayed there, and miraculously it did not decompose. And one day she saw a worm coming out of his ear. And she thought this was the beginning of the end, I guess. And he appeared to her in a dream, and he said the reason why was because once I heard something negative said about a Talmid Chacham, and I did not respond. And because I always did respond, and that was something I was very makpid about, therefore I'm being judged very harshly in terms of that, because what happened on one occasion that I did not. But that is so from that one, from that exception, we learn Rabbi Elazar ben Rabbi Shimon, generally speaking, would not be quiet. And finally, number 6 was okay, somebody who closes their eyes from seeing evil. Rabbi Kenigsberg Talmud זה שאינו מסתכל בנשים בשעה שעומדות על הכביסה. וכתיב ומלומם ישכון. So that is like the din which Rabbi Kenigsberg taught. He said somebody who has to go by a certain place, he goes to passes through by a river where there are women washing their clothes, and it's an immodest scene, and therefore the Gemara says one shouldn't go there. If one has a different path that they can take, they shouldn't go at all. But if they have to go there and there's no choice, but they should close their eyes and they should not witness that. So those are the 6 things which Yeshayahu Hanavi reduced it to 6. Very interesting. The number 6. Why 6? The Maharal says, if you look back and see each one of these principles which Yeshayahu mentions has got a different part of the body associated with it, right? Holech tzakot is the legs, dover mesharim is the mouth, mo'es bebetzem hashakot is the heart, no'er kapaf mitmoch b'shochet is the hands, otem ozno is the ears, and otzem enav is one's eyes. So those are 6 different parts of the body. In other words, using all the different parts of the guf in order to serve Hashem. Okay, so we had David HaMelech said 11, Yeshayahu Hanavi said 6. Next comes, where are we? Yeah. Next comes Micha. Micha Hanavi ba Micha ve'midan al 3. Micha came and reduced it down to 3. Tichtiv, Higid lecha adam ma tov, u'ma Hashem doresh mimcha. It says in the pasuk in Micha, what does Perek say? What is good and what does Hashem require of you? Kiim asot mishpat ve'avat chesed ve'atznei alechet im Hashem Elokecha. So these are the 3. Osem mishpat, to act in righteousness, ve'avat chesed, loving kindness, ve'atznei alechet im Hashem Elokecha, and to walk modestly with Hashem your God. So what are these 3 things? Asot mishpat ze hadin, performing a righteousness, that is din, that is judgment, that is following the law. It's presumably ben adam lechavero. Avat chesed ze gmilut chasadim. Right? Avat chesed, this refers to acts of kindness. V'atznei alechet ze hotzat hamet v'achnasat kala. So he singles out when it says hatznei alechet, refers specifically to hotzat hamet, to arranging for a burial, and achnasat kala, and for providing for a bride, right, for the chuppah. It's interesting that these are separated, because hotzat hamet and achnasat kala really are part of the mitzvah of gemilut chasadim. Interesting how the Gemara separates between them. But also, why does it say hatznei alechet specifically for these 2? Because these are things, hotzat hamet, achnasat kala, are really mitzvot which are public, which are done in public. A funeral, a wedding, right? People come and many people see. Even there, says that a person should attempt to be hatznei alechet, to do things in the most modest way, not to be grandiose, not to do things in order to get credit for them, etc. Hatznei alechet, even where it's going to be public and even where other people are going to see, nonetheless, don't go out searching for the credit. I think there was the Rivan on the left-hand side near the top, where it says hotzat hamet v'achnasat kala. He just says, how do we learn? How does hatznei alechet? How does that imply hotzat hamet and achnasat kala? He says dichtiv b'hu lechet lechet tov lalechet habeit evel milechet leveit hamishter. We have a pasuk that tells us that it's better to go to the Beit Evel rather than to go to the Beit Mishter. Better to go to, meaning it's better for a person ultimately when you walk out of a shiva house. So you walk out of a funeral, so a person reflects, a person's introspective, a person thinks about, what their place in life and what they're going to be, versus a person goes to a party, goes to a wedding, etc. But the point is, we have a pasuk that quotes those two and uses the word lechet, and that is the connection to that's now lechet. Okay, so we had David HaMelech said 11, and then Yeshayahu said 6, and then Micha said 3. Now says the Gemara something surprising. It says, sorry, that's then the Gemara continues. So we said that's now lechet zeh otzat hamet v'achnasat kala v'lo dvarim kal v'chomer u'ma dvarim she'en darkan lasotan b'tzinah amra Torah v'tznei lechet dvarim she'darkan lasotan b'tzinah al achat kama v'kama. In other words, that is here's the kal v'chomer. Just as those things which ein darkan lasot b'tzinah, as we've explained, there are things which you would not do in journey or not done in private. Hotzat hamet and achnasat kala, these are public events, but nonetheless, says the Torah over there, it's now lechet, do it modestly, do it privately as much as you can. So therefore, kal v'chomer, dvarim shedarkan lasotan b'tzinah, things which by their very nature are more private, al achat kama v'kama, how much more so? Now says the Gemara, Chazar Yeshayahu v'midan al shnayim. Now comes Yeshayahu Hanavi, and he reduced it actually to 2. Wait a minute, didn't we say that Yeshayahu reduced them to 6? And what do you mean? So Yeshayahu comes back and reduced them to 2. Says the Rivan, but a slightly different Gersa Yasimini. It says by Yeshayahu ben Amotz. It says Kol Sha'a Dorot Shalmat Hayu Mitmatin. It says all the time there was Yeridat Dorot, even in the days of Yeshayahu. So at one point 6 was enough. At one point he said, okay, 6 is not enough. It's 2. We have to change it. So by Yeshayahu, Chazar Yeshayahu. What are the 2? It's Shneimah, Ko Amar Hashem, so it's Hashem, Shemu Mishpat, V'asu Tzedakah. Right? God Mishpat, and perform Tzedakah. Notice that when Micha said 3, these are very similar, but there by Micha it says Asot Mishpat and Ahavat Chesed. Chesed and tzedakah are similar, right? Here Yeshayahu says, it doesn't say perform mishpat anymore, it just says shimru mishpat, I mean, don't ruin it, right? And it doesn't say avat chesed, but it says atzut tzedakah. So that is again another stage of yeridat hadorot. Finally, comes around says ba Amos v'midan al achat. Okay, Amos came and reduced it really to 1 principle. Shneimah, ko amar Hashem leveit Yisrael dirshuni v'chayu. Says Hashem to Beit Israel, seek me out and you shall live. So Matkif Rav Nachman by Yitzchak ema dilshuni b'kol haTorah kula. So the Gemara seems to understand that Amos is holding 1, which seems to be Drishat Hashem, but he says, wait a minute. He says when it says dirshuni, that could mean drasha regarding seeking out, perform the entire Torah. Dirshuni b'kol haTorah kula. That's not 1. It's actually 613. So he says no. Amos was not the one who reduced it to 1. Elabah Chabakuk. Says the Gemara was Chabakuk who came and said v'midan al achat. Chabakuk came and reduced it to 1, which was Shneimah v'tzadik be'emunato yichyeh. And therefore he says the mitzvah of emunah, right? Faith in Hashem. That is the one fundamental, the one foundational principle. From that, everything else will spring forward. 11 is too many, 6 too many, 3 is too many, 2 is too many. Right? We get to 1 that is left is tzadik be'emunato yichyeh. That is what Chabakuk established. Okay, I think that's a good place to stop. Shabbat everybody, and we will see you next week.
Have a good day. It was fabulous. So thank you so much.